Hello, I'm Sheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York. Welcome to One to One. Each week, we address issues of timely and timeless concern with newsmakers and those who report on them, journalists, artists, scientists, educators, social scientists, government officials, yes, politicians. All will be one to one. I'm so pleased to welcome the writer Edwige Danticat to the program today. Novelist, teacher, frequent contributor to The New Yorker, she's turned to her extraordinary family for her latest work, Brother, I'm Dying. It's just been published by Alfred A. Knopf. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You've gotten a tremendous amount of play, for your book. It's been widely reviewed and extremely well reviewed. Have you been surprised by the reaction to it?
I have to say I have been. I say to people, I feel like on this book I've had angels, and maybe it's the subject matter and the people who the book talks about, but it's been a wonderfully pleasant surprise.
The book is about basically your loving and very supportive extended family. Your parents who came to New York when you were very young and left you and your brother under the care of your very loving uncle and aunt back in Haiti. Tell us something about what it was like growing up with your Uncle Joseph and your Aunt Denise.
Well, it was, given the circumstances, the fact that our parents had to leave to come work here in the United States, it was the best of possible things that could have happened. My Uncle Joseph had two children of his own, but they were older, and then there were the rest of us, my cousin, my brother, and other relatives who lived in this big house with them. My uncle was the family patriarch who had actually helped raise his own siblings. So this for him, he was used to having a lot of children around. So it was a very, sort of busy household, and a lot of things for us to do, but also the freedom of growing up, at that time in Haiti. It was a good time. And
it really was, as I said, an extended family, because your uncle took in, I think about Marie Micheline, who was not related to him, but was, I guess, sort of abandoned child of friends, and he raised her as his daughter.
Oh yes, he was. They had a son, a biological son, but didn't have a daughter, and he worked with a man who Cuban emigre in Haiti, and Marie Micheline, my cousin, her mother died soon after she was born, and she was left with him. So she was one of many. She was like me or my brother, like one of many children that my uncle raised. But I also want to emphasize this, in the more general sense, that this is a very typical Caribbean, I think, African diaspora set up too, in that, you have your parents, but that, the tourism, the real source of this saying is African, and that it takes a village, to raise a child, and that's really how a lot of us lived who are from my background and from my time in the islands.
Now, your uncle he converted to Christianity in a fierce way. He became a minister in the Baptist church. He ran his own church and a school for, boys and girls. Was religion a big part of your daily life when you were growing up?
Oh yeah, it was. I would say it was a big part of sort of every moment, because my uncle, after having aspired to be a politician, to work with a particular politician who was then deposed very quickly from power, he decided to convert and he became a minister. So religion was it was every day we were basically in church, but also part of it was we really learned through the rituals of his church, especially, you learn about birth because you have the baptisms, you learn about death because you have the funerals, you learn about love because there are the weddings, and he was sort of at the center of all that. So it was really a way, when you're a child, an amazing way of watching a parade of life going by.
You don't talk much about, hardly at all, about education in your book, about going to school or interaction with other school kids or teachers. What was your education like in Haiti?
Well, my education was pretty much like a lot of children in Haiti, is that a great deal of education, was done in French at that. Now there's more education in Creole, which is the first language of Haiti. The teachers were very, very strict, and there was a lot of rote memorization. And I do talk about in the book in reference to my cousin Marie-Micheline, and one day where she had to go to the school to, there was corporal punishment allowed at school, and so sometimes they would ask your parents to come do it, and I would always try to get my cousin to go and to the school, and what she would do, and she would work out a deal with the teacher so that we wouldn't get punished often. But it was, I was able to get a good education, a private school education, but not private school like in the fancy sense, because in Haiti most schools, good or bad, are private, because there's not an extraordinary public school system.
So this was a private school that you were attending?
Yeah, it was a private school, but it was part of it, it was in part we were able to attend it because my parents were here working and they sent money back home for us to attend school.
You probably are aware that African Americans in this country have not always fared well in the public school system here. I don't know how much knowledge you have. Your daughter's young. She's not in school yet. But do you have a sense that that somehow the school systems are very much different in the United States than in Haiti?
Oh, I think they're glaringly different. I noticed that when I came from Haiti at 12 and attended junior high school here. But in Haiti, there's a kind of, I don't know if it still exists, because this has been a long time. But for example, when we were in school in Haiti, when the teacher walked in the room, the whole class had to stand up, even if she had gone out for a second. So there was a great, a great deal of respect expected for school, for teachers. And part of it, there are things that would never fly here, like I mentioned, the punishments and things like that. So it's hard to manage. But I see, even in Miami where I live, where they say that it's ranked as one of the worst public school systems in the country. One thing I've noticed here in this country is that you have schools are so linked with economic status, which is why I think it's very hard for some group of people to fail. You'll have exceptions, but it's consistently, you consistently have, better schools in richer neighborhoods and worse schools in poor neighborhoods. And why people don't address that more directly, I don't know, but it's glaringly obvious here to me.
It's more egalitarian, you think, in Haiti, the education?
Not egalitarian because you have to pay for it, but for example, in Haiti, we had in the time before mine and other times where you would have the stars of the country come out of some of the best public schools, and I'm sure that still exists here, but these are exceptions. But and comparing, I would say. The public school system in Haiti probably has fewer resources than even the worst public school systems here. So it's very hard to compare.
Mm-hmm. You're probably aware that in the press, in the American press, Haitians have not gotten a very good rap. I think the perception that many Americans may have of Haitians, there was the alleged connection to HIV. Haitians are written about in terms of the violence and corruption in the government at home, in terms of the poverty and turmoil, and the Haitians who are desperately fleeing the country to try to come here or some other place to have a better life. Was one of your goals in writing this book to sort of humanize Haitians, to show them as three-dimensional people as opposed to people with a lot of problems?
Well, one of my goals was to, introduce people to these individuals that I know, in all their complexity and all their difficulties, and good and in bad. And that's what I feel like I try to do in all my works, to give people, give a broader view of Haiti, give a broader view of Haitians. And all these things you mentioned are part of who we are. but also there's other sides. Their mothers, their fathers, their sons, their daughters, dreamers, and all that. So I want to show the complexity of both these things, both these kinds of people.
Clearly, you felt loved, by your aunt and uncle. But having had your parents leave at such an early age and go far away, did you ever have any doubts? I mean, did you ever feel abandoned by them?
Well, I didn't. I knew so many children who, as I'd mentioned, were in that same situation. And all the time, my aunt, my uncle, other people were always telling us, one day your parents will come for you. And I think even children whose parents are living with them in the same house have a sort of a fantasy of their fantastic parents
right.
who are going to come one day.
Right.
And so mine was doubled in that sense. Like I knew I had these parents and they were going to come for us. And so there was always that. That was very much emphasized by my aunt and uncle. So we knew that our parents were there, and they, my dad wrote us letters. We spoke on the phone when we could. So there was always that connection. We never really felt abandoned. It always felt, even though I was separated from my father for 10 years and my mother about 8 years, we still felt like any day now we were going to be with them.
And what was it like when you saw them again after, I think it was 5 years, when they came to visit? What was that like?
It was really strange because, you build up all these expectations too, but they were like so giant to us, and giant, beyond the sense that adults are giant because they were from this different place. And, but I think, it's just like, I think I felt sort of childhood ambivalence, because there they were. I remember being a little shy to approach them, but still when I did, like knowing, there was a kind of warmth in it, and also they came with my two brothers who were, my brothers sometimes call themselves the anchor babies,
right.
the ones who were born here, and so that was also a bridge because we could, by playing with our brothers and just connect with our parents also in that way.
We have to take a break. We'll be back after the following messages.
Nice.
Hey guys. Ooh, I've been looking for that. Has legal seen this?
Yeah. Cheryl, what happened to your,
Oh, yeah, I know. If it gets any worse, I'll have it checked out.
Worse? How could it get worse?
Yeah, maybe we should call somebody?
I'm fine.
You wouldn't ignore this, so why ignore the signs of a stroke? At the first warning signs, call 911 immediately, because time lost is brain lost.
Welcome back to One to One. I'm Sheryl McCarthy, talking with Edwige Danticat, author of Brother, I'm Dying. Your family members were not particularly emotionally expressive. I remember you talked about, getting the letters from your father, and they were sort of, he didn't...
Restrained.
They were restrained, good word. So how does such a prolific writer come out of that family?
Well, I think my family, because of the distances, always, we're always looking for ways to communicate, and whether through letters or cassettes, but there was also a care about what you said, because later when my uncle and my father would talk about those days, they would say, well, I didn't tell you everything. Like my father would say, once when my uncle had written about a fight that I'd gotten into, and my father got so emotional that he said, I wanted to go back. And then my uncle said to him, well, that's why I didn't tell you about every cut and scrape and all that. So there were these, I think, so the restrained, whether with the letters or with the phone calls, was a way really not to hurt anybody from a distance, not to sort of keep them calm, the sense that still telling the truth about what was happening, but not over worrying either side about something they could not do much about.
Mm-hmm. Now, once you moved to the United States, you were about 12 years old, and your father gave you a typewriter. ostensibly so that you could write to your aunt and uncle and other relatives back in Haiti. Was that a turning point in the development of Edwige Danticat as a writer?
I think so, because he gave me the typewriter because my father and I had very similar handwriting, and that sort of when we start writing on a line, but it goes down. And both for him and for me, it took a lot of effort to write straight. So I think literally he gave me, the typewriter was to say, well, this is so people can understand what you write.
Okay.
But I started pecking things out on the typewriter, and it was really my first typewriter, sort of my first writing.
What was it, an Underwood, did you say?
It was a Corsair.
Oh, okay.
A manual one. And, I love the music of it. And I had, I thought about writing things before, and I had written things in longhand, but it was, anybody who knows, like if somebody gives you something like that, there's a, at that point it was quite an investment, it was a serious kind of, and the only typewriters I had seen before were in offices and, very serious places.
Right.
And it felt strange to have one on my own, but it was great, and it was also such a vote of confidence. And, and whatever he saw ahead for me.
How old were you when you got it?
When I just got there, I got it when I was 12.
Okay.
But I had been writing to him to send me one in Haiti for a very long time.
Oh, okay. So you got it and you finally
Yeah.
got it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, your uncle had something very traumatic happen to him. He had came down with cancer of the larynx, had to have his larynx removed, and for a number of years lost the ability to speak. And this was very traumatic for somebody who was a minister and a teacher. But at some point, on a visit to the United States, was introduced to a voice box and was able to regain his, the ability to speak. Was that something what kind of effect did that have, his regaining that power of speech have on your family?
Oh, it was extraordinary for him, because even though, we never saw him depressed after losing his voice, but it must have been extraordinarily traumatic for someone who is a preacher to lose his voice. And so when he got the voice box, to him, he was never self-conscious about it. He was never, it was just a life-saving thing. And so he was able to actually preach with the voice box now, and we were able to have conversations. We could talk on the phone. It really changed the way that we were able to communicate with him.
When your uncle finally fled to the United States in the midst of a lot of turmoil in the country was it 2004?
2004.
That he came, and because some United Nations soldiers had fired down on some, I guess, Haitian gang members from the roof of his church, and people mistakenly thought that your father had given them permission to do this, and he became really a hunted man and came here looking for temporary asylum, not really just to stay until things blew over. But unfortunately was arrested, taken to the Chrome detention facility, and the notorious holding place for people who come here from other countries, and having a number of medical conditions, was not properly treated and wound up dying there. Has there been any investigation into the way your uncle was treated?
Well, there was an investigation by the Inspector General of the Department of Homeland Security, and but the conclusion of the investigation was basically that no one did anything wrong. But I was able to, through Freedom of Information request and through a lawsuit that we filed, we were able to get the documents involved in that investigation and my uncle's records, which are very helpful in finding out about his last days, but also in writing certain parts of the book, because the mystery of what happened in Haiti. I had family there. There were press reports, and there were ways that I could find out. But what happened inside the American bureaucracy where he died was a lot more difficult to find out. Mm-hmm. So we requested that investigation, but nothing punitive came out of it for anybody who was involved.
There's a lot of talk about the whole question of immigrants, whether the United States is how are we going to change immigration policy? How do you keep illegal immigrants out of the country? How do you treat the ones who are here? Are there changes that you would like to see in immigration policy that would have made a difference in how your uncle was treated, or also in how your parents were treated? Because one of the reasons you were able to come to this country was because your parents had children here who were American citizens, and that allowed them to apply for permanent residence, which allowed them to bring you here. Are there changes in the law that you would like to see that might have given your uncle, your parents, a different kind of shake?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that, before my dad died, who had also lived here for 30 years, and one of the things that he said in one of the conversations we had was that a lot of the doors that had been opened for him were suddenly closed. For example, it wouldn't be possible for my parents to have stayed because they have kids anymore, because that's no longer happening. And with my uncle, if there had been different laws, for example, towards Haitian asylum seekers, especially in Miami, perhaps he would have been treated differently. So I think, in terms of immigration policy, I think it's important that the people who are in charge of this policy here remember that there are individuals involved, that there are families. Because I think in the dialogue in this country, we talk about 12 million illegals, and it's bunched together, and we forget that they're loved ones, and that people are already here, and that they've started these families, and that we have to address that. We have to address that issue as more a human issue than as a blight, as people sometimes seem to be thinking about it.
I think there are probably a lot of Americans who are not aware of the degree of United States involvement in Haiti's past. That the Marines occupied Haiti for 19 years, up until, I guess, the late 30s, and they came in, and there was a lot of violence, and there was a lot of forced labor. And, of course, the United States has been involved in support for a lot of oppressive regimes. Do you feel that, a lot of where Haiti is now, which is not the most enviable situation, has a lot to do with the American influence there, the American involvement in Haiti?
Well, it begins with, 1804, when Haiti got its independence, because it was a nation, slaves had created this revolution. Haiti was not recognized by France or the United States and had to pay a debt to France. And then the occupation, even the U.S. occupation of Haiti, even after it ended, the U.S. was in charge of Haitian financial affairs until the late 40s. And the army that followed, that unseated a lot of the following democracies, were trained by U.S. Marines. So I think it's certainly a contributing factor to the places where we are. And sometimes, when you talk to Americans here, they say, well, why can't the Haitians get it together? But there are so many factors, and there are so many things to overcome, not just in the past, but in the future, where Haiti is a very small place, and sometimes, crunched between several world powers, the United States certainly being one of them, but more recently to Canada and France getting involved. And if you're not, if the leadership or something is not going the way they want, that gets crushed, and it's to start again.
You live in Miami now, where there's a large population of Haitians, a large population of Cubans who have, according to U.S. policy, been treated a lot differently. How do those two groups interact?
On individual levels, fine. I think there's not, when people talk about the policy, from the Haitian perspective, it's not like Haitians or we're saying, oh, the Cubans need to be treated worse. And we're just, it needs to be an egalitarian policy, is what people are saying. And now more and more the Cubans also realize that and are participating. But on a human level, people, there's no problems. People eat together, get along together. It's just that, I think on the general level, on the policy level, the differences, of course, are glaring in that the sense that sometimes you have two people, a group of Haitians and a group of Cubans come in a boat, and the Cubans stay and the Haitians leave. So it's very visible, but I think not one group blames the other for that.
I'm so sorry, but we're out of time. My thanks to Edwige Danticat for joining me today. Her book, Brother, I'm Dying, has just been published by Alfred A. Knopf. For the City University of New York and 1 to 1, I'm Sheryl McCarthy.